Ladies and gentlemen, let me open a regular meeting, City Council, City of Pearland for September the 23rd, 2019. If you please rise, we'll have an invocation tonight by Councilmember Reed, and Councilmember Hernandez will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Everyone, please bow their heads. Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us to see another day, Lord. Lord, thank you for continuing to bless our great city, Lord. Please watch over us tonight. Please watch over the decisions that we make here as a council, Lord. Thank you for allowing the folks that are here in attendance to be here tonight, Lord. And please watch over each and every one of us as we travel home and to our respective destinations. Please continue to watch over our men and women in service, our first responders, and those that continue to serve and protect our city. These blessings we ask in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you for being here tonight. Please join me first in the pledge to our nation's flag, then to our state flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you.
I want to express my appreciation for all of you being here tonight as we go through some of the business of the city, the business for your city and my city. Move to our roll call, which is item 3, and I'm using the same agenda you might have. Item 3 is roll call, and all of our council members are here with bright, shiny faces. Move to item 4, citizen comments. Councilmember Little, would you conduct that item?
Okay, we have one request to speak on a topic. I'll wait till we get to that topic, that agenda item. The other ones are just general comments. First on the list, Diane Butcher. Please come to the podium, state your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have half a minute left.
My name is Diane Butcher. I live at 1922 Prairie Creek. I am on the board for the Wood Creek neighborhood, and there's been quite a bit of discussion lately on our neighborhood forum regarding the pending tax increase. I came to the meeting last week to ask a question, but I wasn't able to stay long enough to ask it. So I wrote to City Council asking the questions, never received a response. So I wrote to an individual councilman who said they would get back to me within a day, and I still haven't heard back from them. So I'm here tonight to ask my questions. These are not accusations. We have sincere questions that we would like answers to. Because of the small turnout in the vote in May, out of a population of 125,000 people, less than 6,000 people voted, and only 4,000 people elected to pass the item agendas, the propositions. So we are sincerely wondering if there's any way to, what can we do to have a revote or sign petitions or try to get more people involved and see what the greater population of Pearland is wanting and not just this tiny little percentage that probably wasn't aware of the fact that how it was going to affect the rest of our pocketbooks, okay? All these propositions involve in an increase in our taxes. So we need to have a much broader perspective and bigger turnout to see what the majority of the people of Pearland want. And like I said, this is not an accusation, this is a sincere question, but there was some innuendo on the forum about some trips to Dubai, and we were just wondering what was the purpose of these trips, how often, at what cost to us as taxpayers, and what was the purpose of these trips. So I thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll get some answers to our questions.
Thank you, ma'am. The next person is Leo Walker. Please come to the podium. Give your full name and address, please, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Leo Walker. The address is 2004 East Broadway. And it is my honor and pleasure once again this year to come before Mr. Mayor and before council members and invite all of you to join us for our annual Veterans Day Walk. It's a little less than 2 months away now. It's going to be upon us before we even know about it. But we're going to print here fairly soon, so we thought it was a good time to come in and invite everyone in the city to come out and join the walk. We've been doing this for 6 years now as a way to honor the service of our veterans here in Pearland and throughout Texas and throughout the country, to raise some money for those who are coming back from the battlefield and still struggling with post-traumatic stress and anxiety, depression, and other challenges as a result of their service. So all of the money that gets raised goes to local organizations that are helping veterans. We are very fortunate. We have a title sponsor who's underwriting all of the costs of the event, which means every ticket sold, every t-shirt sold, and the shirts again are being donated by Angie Infante from Graphic Icons. Thank you, Angie. And every business sponsorship that we get will go 100% towards the benefits of the organizations that are helping our veterans. So I know we have a number of veterans on the council, members of the VFW there. Thank you all for your service. We have a number of folks I see sitting up there who have already made pledges to this year's walk, and I thank you for those as well. If there's anyone else who is so inclined to do so, I do have forms here. And Mr. Orlando, since you're close, maybe I'll just scoot a few over to you on my way out that you can pass down. And if there's anyone else here who would like to participate and help to support us, we're still looking for about 6 more business sponsors to come in and be part of the event. It's a really fun day, great day for the kids, and a great way for the kids to learn about how Pearland and how Texas honors the service of our veterans. So. November 9th at the Pearland Recreation Center. It'll be a really fun day for a really important cause. So come on out, everyone, and be part of it. Thank you much.
Thank you, sir, for what you're doing for our veterans. The next person on the list is Dallas Wilson. State your name and your address, please, and you have 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Yes, hello. My name is Dallas Wilson. I live at 2801 Waterside Trail right here in Pearland. I am on the lead team at Grace Church in South Houston, right down the road near Dixie Farm, as you probably are aware. We've been around for the last 35 years. In the month of August and September, as a church, we are seeking to honor and recognize all that our community leaders are doing. To say thank you publicly and appreciate you for the service that you provide. Service is not a given. If it was, everyone would do it. Instead, service is a sacrifice, and we appreciate what you choose to do. Not only have done and are doing, but what you choose to do to make our cities great. And we just wanted to acknowledge that. We distributed these medallions to everyone just as a small recognition of appreciation for all that you bring to our cities. If I did have any form of agenda tonight, it would simply be this. You will also find in the bags a business card of mine from Grace Church. I'm actually the community engagement pastor, and my desire is simply, if you recognize a need that you believe we might better serve the city of Pearland, please let me know. We are a large church traditionally known for our events, our concerts, and the honoring of our fallen heroes, but the desire of our senior pastor, Garrett Booth, is that we would begin to move beyond our four walls into strategic partnerships with the cities around us, and that you would see us as a part of the solution and not just someone asking, not just someone telling, but someone also like you ready to serve. Thank you so much again, and God bless. You are in our prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. The next speaker, we'll wait till we get to the agenda item, then I'll call you up.
Complete them, okay? Moving in our agenda to item number 5, there are no public hearings tonight. Item 6 is the consent agenda. Councilmember Alonso, I'd love for you to present this, but first let us get those items to be.
Does anyone want to pull any items?
Item E, please.
I want to pull item before we do that. Pull items that we need to pull. What's your number?
Echo, Mayor. Echo. E.
Item E.
Yes, sir. Echo.
Item E. What else?
Anyone else?
Taker. All items except E.
Okay, consideration and possible action on the consent agenda items A through G with the exception of E. So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. We're in discussion. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item just on E, or do you want to vote on the balance of it, Mayor? Or, yeah.
Let's vote on the other items on the agenda before we discuss E.
Okay.
Councilmember Orlando, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Consent agenda items A through G with the exception of E passed 7-0.
Let's take the next item.
So consideration and possible action resolution number R 2019-234. So moved.
We have a motion and second. We're in discussion. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. This is a renewal. This is for a regular maintenance contract with Lee Thompson, primarily at our Recreation Center and Auditorium. Obviously, those units are heavy duty, large scale, continuous operation. This amount is based primarily on past practice and estimates, but does provide a little bit of extra. So that, these units are about 10 years old, I'm told. And so trying to get out ahead of any preventative maintenance and things that will come up in the fiscal year upcoming. But it is a renewal. Ask your consideration of that.
Council have a question or comment on staff report?
Yes, Mayor, I pulled the item just for clarification. If I remember correctly, these units are specialized and there's only, this is the only vendor in the region that can actually maintain these. Is that correct?
That's correct. They're Dectron units, and they are specialized and built for that kind of tough environment.
Okay. And so that's why they've come up for renewal and been given this award so often over the last few years, is just because there's really no other game in town.
Yeah, I mean, we put it out, but they have to be authorized or we avoid other issues. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
I got one question on that one
Council have the
also.
questions on it?
I do.
Councilman Owens.
Looking over that since 2018, we're looking at a $47,000 increase. It seems like every year that there is an increase into that. Is there something that is wrong with the equipment, or is the maintenance going up that much?
Maybe Trent can speak. I mean, you may recall, it might have been before you came on again, but we did have some more major issues. It seems like we're back on top of those and have a good program, but replace some parts.
The contract includes the quarterly preventative maintenance, which is about $21,000 of the expenditure. The rest of it's for repairs as needed. And based on track record, the last couple of years have been pretty decent years for this facility. There's been prior years where we did spend much more than this. We asked to put the contract in place for the $100,000 to make sure we have adequate funds in there for any repairs that do occur, but we will only spend what is necessary for any repairs to that system. So our expectation is we spend less than what's being awarded, but we want to make sure we've got enough in there if we do have any repairs that we make sure we have those made quickly and get the facility back
I
in
noticed,
operation.
Trent, there was the write-up said 4 bids that they had on that, but we didn't have the bid sheets in there to see what the other bids were.
The bids are included, and this was bid in 2018, so this is a renewal, so we can only award the renewal to the current contractor. The bid tab is included.
Oh, the bids that you specify in here, the 4 bids, those were in 2018?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it wasn't bid this time, it's just a renewal of existing?
No, this is our standard service contract that we do on many of them, where we award it, and then we have 2 renewal years, subject to agreement by both parties. And so they've agreed to continue with the same pricing this year as they had the past year. And so we're renewing that contract.
Yeah, because I've noticed this will be their 13th year of having a contract with us at the natatorium.
Right, and that's been rebid multiple times, and this is a renewal of last year's bid.
Okay, thank you.
Does any of this fall under since it's the rec center and the natatorium, fall under the cost share agreement that we have with the school district?
Any of the repairs on the natatorium only side of the facility, that in any individual repair that exceeds $15,000 is then shared 50-50 with the school district.
Okay. So, but that's only if, how would that be calculated then with the HVAC system? I guess it's split into different units, and if it's only the unit covering the natatorium, is that correct?
Yes, the natatorium has its own separate units from the recreation center. They're built and made to handle that type of environment that we have in the natatorium, as well as work with the boiler system and to provide heat for the pools. And so the HVAC system on the recreation center is completely separate.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from council? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, I believe we've got a motion second on the floor.
Councilmember Orlando?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
No.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-1.
Moving our agenda to item 7, that is removed from the consent agenda. We just took care of that one. New business. Councilmember Reed, would you present item number 1?
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action, second and final reading of ordinance number 1584. So move.
Second.
We have a second. Motion and a second on the floor. Council report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Just to set up a little bit, this is the second and final reading of our budget ordinance for next year, FY20, that starts over the weekend. Council recall that last week, the first reading was approved. That was confirmed, although there was some confusion, we did get that, and that required a simple majority. So now we're here for the second reading. I will point out, just so we're all on the same page, that by the city charter, the budget must be approved tonight. That is a requirement that it be approved at the last regularly scheduled meeting in September, so that is this evening. And with that, I will turn over to Mr. McCarter to run through the overview again.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson, and good evening, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is John McCarter, Assistant Finance Director. Just to set up what we have on the agenda for tonight, 4 budget-related items that we'll go through individually. We'll stop after each item for discussion and vote, but we'll start out with the budget ordinance. That would be the second final reading, followed by the tax rate, the non-development fees, and then the development fees. Because this is the second and final reading on these items, if there are changes that need to be made, we do need to make a motion, a second, and a record vote to make sure that that gets on the final version. For anyone following along in the audience or watching at home with an internet connection, you can go to pearlandtx.gov/FY20 budget, and all the materials for tonight's meeting and all of our prior meetings and CIP meetings are posted up there for your review. So with that, we will get into the budget ordinance and run through this. Diving right in, we'll start with the general fund. Looking big picture, we do have a balanced budget, meaning that we have revenues exceeding expenditures by about $723,000. We do have our fund balance above our policy minimum, which we increased at mid-year ahead of schedule to the 60 days of full expenditures. We do have investment in people in this budget through a cost of living adjustment, longevity payments, step pay, one-time pay, and a number of supplemental requests. And then worth mentioning that we do have some FEMA reimbursements coming through for Hurricane Harvey. Those will all be used for one-time expenditures because they're not recurring revenue. So we're holding off on that until we see those dollars actually come through. Continuing on the big picture, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that over the last 10 years, Pearland's been one of the fastest growing cities in the country. With that, our budget has grown. However, looking here, a screenshot from our most recent comprehensive annual financial plan, we have managed to reduce that per capita expenses in the general fund over the last 10 years. So keeping that in check, growing with the population, but also lowering that important metric. Looking at some of the investments we're making this year in the general fund, the 13 firefighters is the big investment that will enable us to open fire station number 8 with a apparatus and a medic unit running out of that initially. 2 sworn police officers, both scheduled to start in the Criminal Investigations Division. 2 telecommunications officers, which have been a longstanding recommendation from the Berkshire study several years ago. Cybersecurity specialists that would live in our IT department, keep us safe from some of the attacks we've seen nation and globally. Additional investment in streets and sidewalks. This falls short of our where we want to be, but an additional $400,000 this year brings us up to a total of $459,000 for sidewalks and $654 for streets. Our traffic and bucket crew enables our traffic division to get after some of the regular maintenance, avoid contracting that out, do it in-house a little cheaper and a little more flexibility there as well. Our GovQA public records solution software will be used by our city secretary's office to collaborate with departments on public information requests, getting that information to citizens sooner and a little more efficient. We also have a 2% cost of living built in here, a step pay, a longevity payment, and our year-end pay as well. That $1.6 million shown on the board is across all of our funds, so it's not just general fund shown there. Then we have our management assistant housed out of our human resources department, which was a position we instated this last year, has been making some progress on our high-performance organization goals. Lastly, the parks mower package, that $77,000 would be to cover some of the cost for additional equipment to make that group a little more efficient as they operate new facilities. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention what's not in this budget. The additional $4.3 million in streets and sidewalks is still needed to maintain our pavement condition index. That was a result of a study several years ago. Falling short of that number does open us up to that pavement condition, which is good now, dropping as we grow older as a city. $6.8 million in supplemental requests in the general fund, not funded here. That's everything that was asked for by departments to improve and maintain current services. You can see the bulk of that is public safety, followed by internal service departments, Parks and Rec, and Public Works. At the early budget input session back in February, we had discussed a 3% COLA. We only include a 2% here. That's to save about $602,000 across all funds. And then lastly, the big scary number are $15.4 million of eligible general fund replacement vehicles. That's everything that meets our minimum requirements for replacement that's not being funded this year. I won't go through all the staffing highlights here, but these are all the new positions. In general fund, 26.5 total. You can see we have a nice mix here between internal services, public safety, Parks and Recreation, and some Public Works related items. I will add that the aquatics technician, the custodial staff, and the project coordinator are all revenue neutral, meaning that they either have a transfer in covering their costs or those departments have identified reductions to cover the additional expense for the staff. Looking at general fund revenue, obviously property tax leads the way. We see the largest increase here that pushes us up to our rollback rate. Our sales and use tax, we're projecting a 1% increase. Our most recent numbers that we saw was right under a percentage increase, so we feel pretty good about that projection for right now. On the charges for services, there are 2 major changes here. The first is the TERS administration fee. That's 64% of all property tax revenue that comes out of that tax increment refinancing zone. And the second are payments for emergency service districts, which are new this year, somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 additional revenue coming into the city. And I won't go through the rest of these, all moderate changes from the prior year. Looking by function here, obviously public safety leading the way, with more than half the budget being invested there, followed by Public Works, General Government, Parks and Recreation, Community Services. It transfers to other funds. This is a new slide. We had a request to kind of walk back to last year's budget and outline exactly what changed and how it got us to where we are now. Up on the screen is kind of a summarized version of a document that you can find on page 14 of your AR that lists every single one of these items there, so you can see that reconciliation yourself. We started with the FY19 adopted budget. Some would ask why you don't have the amended budget up here. Remember, the amended budget for FY19 has carryovers in it, has some mid-year allocation items. Those aren't recurring. We don't want to compare to that. So we start with the lower FY19 adopted budget. We back out the non-recurring expenditures, and kind of our quote-unquote baseline is in yellow up on the board, FY19 total recurring expenditures at $80.2 million. Then we add in the supplemental requests. You can find those on the highlights section in the book, or details for every one of those is in the appendix as well. Partial year employees, these are folks that we hired on for 3, 6, 9 months last year. We have to make up that expense this year, that $447,000. And then the largest number here is our FY20 sustaining items. This includes our investment in people. That's the COLA, longevity, one-time pay. This also includes motor pool expenses, which are stepped up this year. That's about $500,000, a little more than that, and other required obligations that we have to pay out, like insurance and some other things. So when you take all that and you add it together, that gets us within about $21,000 of our FY20 proposed budget. That $21,000 increase on the remaining accounts represents 0.03% increase from last year. If you control that with inflation, that's actually a decrease to things that are not shown here on the board. So again, page 14, you can see kind of the details behind that, but that's an effort to be a little more transparent on what we're adding here. I will add that all these items are highlighted somewhere in the budget, but this was just an item to centralize those. Salaries and benefits make up about 76% of our general fund budget. Obviously, by far the largest investment that we're making here. This, similar to the last slide, was an effort to show kind of our base, and then what is kind of built on top of that and pushing that up. We do see an increase of roughly $3.45 million. It's roughly 6%. Most of this is coming from new staff this year, led by the firefighters that we're adding for station number 8. The total cost there is $1.6 million for staff alone. And then the cost of living adjustments, the next largest, that's $1.14 million for that 2% COLA. So looking at this overall, you can see up on the board, we are maintaining our policy minimum, our $125,000 over that minimum, adding $723,000 to the fund balance this year to present a balanced proposed budget for your consideration. On the debt service fund, overall, we are planning to use roughly $550,000 worth of fund balance. That still maintains us about $305,000 over that policy minimum. As we've done in past years, we have committed roughly $4 million to keep that tax rate down. We do expect to see that money back from frozen values and things that aren't on the rolls just yet, but that is a commitment that we have made and we show here and in the budget book as well. The breakout of the tax rate, so again, this is kind of just a breakdown where the dollar goes. You can see that the general fund side on the right, making up $25.4 million worth, $32.6 million of that is going to debt service. Those are obligations for projects and bonds that have already been issued. And then lastly, all the way on the left, the in-city MUD rebates, about $6 million overall. Those are required contractually for the city to pay to in-city MUDs for their infrastructure projects that they have issued debt for. And then on the bottom, just to show our existing obligations and the additional debt that got issued this year, what was the impact? I will add that the FY19 refunding is shown there as $300,000, but that did save us a considerable amount because it reduced those existing obligations. We point to this a lot as we talk about the ability to pay debt. The assessed valuation is what drives property taxes, which ultimately pays for our debt service. You can see here, since 2013, we do see that consistently going down year over year. That has been a trend even prior to 2013. But again, we consider this our barometer for our fiscal health as it comes to paying our debt. Similar, but I would argue not as important, the debt per capita. This is taking our total debt obligations and comparing it to the number of people who live here in Pearland. Again, those are related, but not one-to-one like the assessed value. Again, we see that going down. That's been a trend since before 2013 as well. Looking at the city's enterprise fund, water and sewer fund, we do have several supplemental requests here. Construction maintenance crew to improve services out in the city. Backflow inspector, very important to maintain our compliance with state regulations. The Peterbilt truck and trailer, again, to maintain those services, along with the maintenance supervisor and right-of-way inspector. At the very bottom, we see our application specialist that would be housed in IT. Initially would be instrumental in rolling out the asset management software and then providing support through the SCADA system and a number of other projects that are going on the public works side. Again, I won't go through all of these, but we do see heavy on public works, as well as a billing specialist here for the utility billing department, built in for 9 months, and a cybersecurity specialist. That's the other half of the position we talked about before, for a total of 8 positions being added in to the enterprise fund. Looking at some of the big dollars, the 2% COLA on the enterprise fund side is roughly $150,000. Supplemental requests totaled altogether $910,000. We are planning to replace $824,000 worth of vehicles with an annual debt service of $19.1 million. Our water purchases at $5.8 million. That number probably will fluctuate as we've seen this year as consumption goes up and down. So does those water purchases, but we'll keep an eye on that as we move throughout the year. Looking by division up here on the board, the other requirements leads the way. This is predominantly made up of that $19 million in debt service, but also includes some cash funding for projects, some insurance payments and other things like that, but mostly debt. And then you go down to the operational departments there. The water and sewer rates shown up here on the board. Per direction with council, we did revert to the AWWA recommended rates. I believe it was in August. So this represents that change for those larger meters. And then on the citywide, you'll see a 1.6% increase on the bill on top of that. So for a resident, they're just going to see the 1.6. For someone with a larger meter, they're going to see the adjustment in the base rate plus the 1.6 as well. Looking at our rate comparison, we took a kind of average Joe with $6,000 worth of water and sewer consumption and compared them to some other cities around the area. You can see us right here in the middle compared to those that are surrounding us. So overall, we maintain within all of our policy minimums and bond requirements here with the 1.6% increase in the adjustment to the AWWA recommended base rates. We are looking to add about $3.5 million worth of fund balance to really stay within those bond requirements is what's driving that up mostly. I think with that, I'll hand it back to Mr. Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. McCarter. I just want to take a step back and thank the staff, Mr. McCarter, everybody. Ms. Pearson has done a great job over the last months in giving you our best recommendation. Obviously, it's the council's consideration at this point. Just for myself to highlight, that slide 4 that showed the long run of city expenditures compared to population and how on that per capita basis compared to we're actually spending less per capita, being more efficient, and economy of scale obviously is helping us. And while we're doing that, we've built a full-time fire EMS department that we didn't have 10 years ago. We've drastically improved our drainage systems, added police officers, any number of service improvements. So I think that should be a good touchstone for us. And then that slide 12 that Mr. McCarter explained very well, it's not new information, but it is, I'm sorry, 11, I apologize. You were right the first time, 12. It summarizes the materials that council's had, and this shows on one page, and you've got the detail behind it that shows every line that gets us from the current 19 budget up to the 20, and it's very clear when you look at that, where the changes are. If you look at the supplementals, 47% of that comes from the 13 new firefighters to begin staffing, not totally staff. New Station 8 that's under construction that'll be ready in June, July next year to open up and serve, and we need people there to obviously staff that equipment. The partially your employees were committed to, and then those sustaining items, as was described, is the taking care of our employees with I think a minimal 2% COLA that we're able to afford, adding $400,000 more to neighborhood streets and sidewalks that wasn't there, that I know is a sore point, and we'll look to add to that further as the year goes on. And then anything besides that, it's in this $80 million budget is $21,000. So there's not a lot of extra that's going into it, that there's nothing extra that's going into it. It's actually reductions to be able to do this. So, it's a solid budget as we started out with, balanced, meeting the needs and trying to get after what we started out back in February, said we wanted to be in a wide variety of responsibilities. So thanks for all your time and attention over these weeks and months. Again, for this budget resolution requires a simple majority of the council.
Okay. This budget that we're looking at tonight was put together by workshops. I don't know how many we had to arrive at what John just presented to us a while ago. So I think it's a well put together presentation. I think it's reasonable in supporting the tax rate that we're going to have. Council, at this point,
Mayor, before we get into council discussion, we have one citizen that would like to speak on the property tax and budget. Jeff Hunkley, please come up to the podium. Give your name and address and limit your talk to 3 minutes. I'll let you know we have 30 seconds left.
My name is Jeff Hunkley. I live at 3912 Oakwood Drive North. I believe, speaking for a group, I get 5 minutes. Is that correct?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So just a show of hands, how many people are here rejecting the property tax increase or concerned about it? Oh, good. So I'm not the only one. So I came here again to protest the property taxes. You're already planning to increase these in the next few years, and this is really our chance to get a little break along the way. I've been seeing more and more for sale signs going up in our neighborhood and want to know what happens when we have fewer citizens to tax. Even though some members said they were against this increase, they still voted for it. I thought you're supposed to represent the average citizen. How can you be against it and still vote for the increase? Have many citizens come and voiced their concerns and said, you know what, I'd really like to pay more taxes so I have less money for my family. Because of this, it leads me to believe there are ulterior motives that are either benefit certain members, or you plan on moving so it doesn't affect you, or maybe you're not a homeowner and you don't pay the property taxes there. Similarly is with the budget. Most members said they didn't like the budget and more could be done to reduce it. Yet it passes 4-3. Is it too difficult to assign groups to review budgetary items and trim the excess? Or is it simply easier to ask for more money? In the last meeting, when it was feared the budget wouldn't pass, it was asked during the meeting, well, can you let us know what can be changed so we can focus on it? This is a multi-million-dollar budget, and we're trying to rush to fix it during a meeting. Is this a type of rush of judgment that should be given to improve it? So I decided to take a crack at it myself. I reviewed one single budgetary item, which was awarding data posts to print and mail utility bills. Their bid was for $239,000 and some change, but they were awarded $245,000, which is about $5,100 difference. When I questioned this, I was told that was for miscellaneous mailing inserts if needed. Did we get this money back if no miscellaneous mailings are needed? If I buy tires for my car and they quote me $550, but I give them $700 and say, this is in case something else comes up, just use it at your discretion, they'd think I was crazy. Okay, look, Pearland has a large budget, and who cares about $5,100, right? Let's think about this for a minute. There were 6 items on the agenda being awarded for today, 5 for last week's agenda. If similar excesses were found over a year's time, those miscellaneous charges come to over $1 million, and some of the budget items could have more excess than $5,000. Also, shouldn't people using this service pay for it? Why should I pay taxes on cigarettes if I don't smoke? I know I have bills where I can opt out for online billing to lower costs. Charge the customer $1 to print and mail their bills, and then we could save the full $245,000, and that is savings for one budget item alone. So if you really want to have find savings, have citizens cut budget items. Let's have a contest, and for every citizen that finds 10 times their property taxes and savings, they get their taxes waived for a year. I guarantee you'll see a budget, the lowest budget in your life. There's a lot of talk on social media regarding these issues. We have been organizing, and your vote will be remembered the next time your name shows up on the ballot. Last week, we were told it costs money to run a city, and don't we want a great police force? Don't we want fast fire response times? Frankly, I'm not questioning the police or fire personnel. These are our modern-day heroes and deserve our support. Bringing attention to these men and women is a way to distract from the real unnecessary or extravagant budget items. But when a $13 million animal shelter goes up on the ballot instead of other necessary city improvements, then I start to question these and other budgetary items.
30 seconds, please.
I believe each item can be trimmed to create a more modest and reasonable budget. I regret I didn't get involved during this year's budget, and I want to be part of the solution. I'm not just a complainer. I'm sure savings can be found in some of these items and propositions. Maybe we don't get all the options we want, but let's start by getting the things we need. I can buy a car I need for $20,000 to get me where I need to go, instead of buying a car I want for $500,000, especially if someone else is paying for it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, please.
That's it, Mayor, for citizen comments.
Okay, good. Well, we have received staff report on that. Council have any question about staff report, comments?
Mayor, I think I've spoke pretty heavily on budget process so far on there. A short version is I will vote no on the budget, and the particular reason why is I think that we can go on the budget with the effective roll, our effective rate, rather than the rollback rate. And there's several reasons for that I'd mentioned previously of going through the bids. So I don't see any reason for me to change my bid on this or my statement on it as it is right now. I just think, a lot of the things that's on here in the budget, and I can see, and I appreciate the additional information that's on here tonight on that, but when you come in, it was just like on the staffing, none of that was listed to come out, in which I didn't, but my concern is a lot of it is the reoccurring costs. When we look on the budget and the information that was submitted up here earlier, we saw additional $400-something thousand because of what we did last year on bringing people in on a pro rata period of time on there. And so the only thing I can say is with the budget as it is right now and the additional costs, I can't see any way that we can get out of raising the tax rate again next year if we accept this budget as it is. So.
Thank you, Mayor. First, want to go over a few things. I'm looking for my notes here. Diane, correct? And I appreciate you not saying my name specifically. I was the person you emailed directly. I intended to get back with you, and I apologize. Life just kind of got ahead of me, and I didn't get back to you in time, and I apologize for that. But I do want to answer your questions. I know the city attorney had sent you a reply, but with respect to the questions you asked for the benefit of the public, let's go through a few of them. So you asked if there's any way we can undo the tax rate or undo a vote. I think you were talking specifically about the bond, and unfortunately, there's not really a way to do it. Once the citizens who voted gave us a directive, by state law we have to follow it. The only way that it could be undone is if we vote against it, but then we could be sued and the state could give us a mandate to follow it. Again, it would be while there is certainly an agreement between me and you about the lack of participation in a lot of these local elections, we do have to abide by the results of them. So there's really no way for us to undo that. But we are doing our best to manage the projects as effectively as we can. With respect to the tax rate and with respect to the budget, the citizens always have the opportunity to generate a referendum with a certain amount of votes, and they can work to put something on a ballot to change something that we've done. There is, under current law, a way for you to do that if we went over the what's called the rollback rate. We're at the rollback rate, so we're not going over it. But even still, you would have the ability to generate a group of citizens to try and modify something that we've done, or at least put it into the voters' hands. In the past, those have been difficult to do. There's just not been enough citizens that have wanted to sign a petition, even on things that have been, I think would generally be considered attractive to the city. And with respect to doing over the process, as you can tell right now, we're not done with the budget process. Tonight is the last vote. So with the context of when you asked the question, there was nothing yet to undo. Tonight we have obligation by the law that we've created, or the laws that the citizens created with the charter, to pass a budget in this meeting. So we have to do something. Maybe it's not as proposed, but we'll have to modify or be able to pass some kind of budget. We're obligated to. With respect to the process, I know there's a lot of questions and maybe some statements about us rushing through this process. We start with this process in February. We come in on a Saturday. We spend the entire Saturday here talking about the budgetary items that we would like to prioritize. That rolls into 2 other budget sessions where we do basically the same thing. But there's a lot of meetings that are held both as a council and some of us individually with staff to talk about budgetary priorities, what we would like to cut, what we'd like to include, what it is that we would like to change in the budget. So it is a long discussion. It's the item that we talk about. While it's a broad item, it's the one that we talk about the most throughout the year, both the tax rate and the budget. We don't come to these decisions lightly. As I've said kind of repeatedly, we're not exempt from the tax rate that we pass. I have 3 kids. I have a small business. I have a home that I want to keep. More money for me is certainly more money I can spend on my kids. It's not an easy decision for me to make, for me to take money out of my own pocket. It's not an easy decision for any of the council members to do that. But when everything is presented to us, we feel like that's what's best for the city, or at least that's how I'm voting. The comment about, would the citizens want us to raise taxes, and would they, tell us repeatedly that they would like us to raise taxes? It's an excellent point. You're right. I've never really had a citizen tell me they want me to raise taxes. What they ask of me is for me to provide more services. I don't really have a whole lot of citizens that say, do less drainage projects. I don't have a whole lot of citizens say, my road is in terrible repair, but I'd much rather you not maintain it. I don't really have a whole lot of citizens that say, the water coming out of my faucet doesn't smell right, but if it means a higher bill, I'd rather you not address it. Or when we talk about safety or fire or all the other things that, as the gentleman said, probably are a bit shinier, a bit flashier, something that everybody pays more attention to. I don't really see a whole lot of people telling us that they would like us to increase the response times with our fire and EMS, increase the response times with our police. We try very hard to balance things as best we can, because we do get a lot of people that ask us to lower the tax rate, but I promise you, I get a lot more people that ask us to either add or improve the services we have. I don't think I've ever talked to a citizen who's ever told me that any of our departments are overstaffed, or they were really surprised how quickly it was for our staff to be able to get to things, because most of our departments are understaffed. Most of our departments have more work than they can manage. That's why we are trying constantly in each budget year trying to put Band-Aids on where the holes are. So you don't have to wait 3 months or 4 months or 6 months to get a permit if you want to do a simple expansion to your house. If you have concerns with, or if you want to be able to rent one of our parks, or do something or rent one of the natatoriums, there's somebody that can answer the phone when you call. It's tough for us to keep up with that. All of those services augmented by the stuff that you don't see behind the scenes. A lot of our finance department, y'all will never interact with because all they're doing is running the budget every year. But if they don't do that and they don't pay attention to that, then somebody else has got to do it. And those individuals, say members of the police department that would be better focused on issues related to the day-to-day services of the police rather than just trying to address budgetary issues, they would have to do it. Same thing with senior staff. We need to have the staff to be able to manage a city this size. It can be uncomfortable when we come to the budget, that we have to adjust the rate to be able to fix the holes that we know that we have. I can promise you, if you and I sat down and talked about the budget, I can promise you, you would probably agree there's far more expenditures in here that you would like to add if you were sitting up here than there are ones that you would like to take away. But I do appreciate you looking at it, and I do appreciate and hope to see you next February when we have our early budget session. I really appreciate your input. I hope for every budget meeting we have twice this many people here, and as many people as we can to help us to understand what it is you would prioritize, what it is you would like us to address, or what it is you think that we're prioritizing that aren't your priorities. We do the best we can with the information. I know everybody up here, while we may not always agree, we all take this very seriously. We all work very hard on this. We all read through reams and reams of information to try and feel comfortable about the decisions that we're making. Again, we don't always agree, and we'll have our discussions and our debates in the back respectfully, but we're trying all to do the best we can for y'all with the information that we have, the resources we have. One of the other things I think is important to note is there are a lot of things that we spend money on that we just don't have a choice. One of the positions that Mr. McKeever mentioned was our backflow preventer inspector. Sounds kind of silly, but the state's telling us we have to do it. It's an unfunded mandate. They bring it down upon us. We've got to figure a way to fund it. If we don't, we're in violation of state law, which means that we end up with fines that are greater than having that staff member. So I probably belabor the point too much, and I don't want to talk any more than I have, but I appreciate all that you're doing. I'm voting for this budget because I work hard with staff and the other council members to get the budget where it is. I do not enjoy raising taxes on myself or anybody else that I live near, but I feel like it's the best decision. I am happy to discuss it with any of you. I will try very hard to be more responsive in the future, and if you would like, I can meet with you and we can talk more about it one-on-one. I do think it's a responsible budget. I do think that this is what's best for Pearland, but I do think that maybe in the next year we can look to try and control the rate of the tax increase or hold effective if we can. That's all I have to say, Mayor.
Yes, I do appreciate everybody being here. I do appreciate your input, and I do encourage you to be involved as early as possible when we start the budget. I said back in February, I don't want anything in this budget because we can't afford it. We cannot continue to add and add and add and add to our budget. We just can't. But as a growing city, we have to continue to do things that I don't necessarily want to do, but if not, then the services suffer. I was probably the one you were talking about, Mr. Hunkley, about being against it, excuse me, but voted for it. The reason why is because there's things particularly in there that I don't like, but overall as the budget itself, I'm not going to disapprove a budget that is set upon paying off debt that the 70% of the bond, or the bond passed with 70% of the vote. 70% of the people that voted said they wanted this bond. 2007, there was a bond. The tax increase that was attached to that bond was never levied. I don't want to put ourselves in that same situation where we're doing a bond and then we have to figure out how to pay for it without the tax increase that the voters said that they're willing to do. So I'm for this budget, even though there's some stuff in there that I don't agree with. Overall, it's the budget. I will vote for it. As far as the tax rate, I voted last time reluctantly, yes, because again, there's stuff in there that I don't necessarily approve, but it's overall, I mean, 70% of the voting populace said that's what they wanted. So I feel like I'm doing the due diligence. And again, like I said, I do not want to end up where we were with the 2007 bond and not have the funding to do it. And it took us over 7 years to complete the projects. And when we completed those projects, most of them were at an inflated rate. To me, that's not being conservative. If we're going to do these projects, we need to have the money to pay for them, get them done, and get them done now. Don't wait 7 years when the inflation rises on it. So that's my thoughts. But I do appreciate everybody being here and your input, and please get involved in February.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad everybody's here tonight, actually, because I wanted to ask for your feedback on something, so it's a great thing. We have a big audience here. I got into some discussions with some people just kind of about how we communicate, and I think our Director of Communications is probably tired of me because I bug him all the time, but he's putting in a lot of work, and we meet regularly and try to figure out how to better, address the public, how to reach everybody, how to get you engaged. But I started looking at the stuff that we did to try to engage the community in these early sessions and provide feedback on how to better engage, the community in the future for, these budget input sessions, so forth. So just, aside from social media, we did, and now we have these great City Council Roundup on the YouTube channels. I don't know if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, the city's Facebook. We have it on the calendar post on the city's website agendas that we have for the actual meetings. We have a dedicated website for the budget. We had several public forums and hearings that we had. And then personally, in the community, I had 2 public forums that I posted that I hosted in the community. I spoke at civic clubs. I spoke at HOA meetings that I was invited to. It's posted on my personal social media. I had emails going out to people who subscribe to my newsletter. I started a text campaign across the city where I advertised. I spent actual money to advertise to get people to come on to this text campaign so that they could stay engaged. We published it in the newspaper. We published it in the magazine that we have. We had several news articles about it in the Chronicle, Community Impact, or Reporter News, and still had people say that they didn't know how to get engaged, how they didn't know how they didn't know how to have us reach them. So I started asking, just tell us where you want. So we welcome your feedback. You can email us and tell us exactly how you want us to better reach you, because we do want you engaged. I think that's super important. But I just named all of these things that we're already doing, and yet we're still not reaching people. So I think it's important if you have a moment to give us that feedback. We very much welcome that. And then also on the consent agenda tonight, if you followed the packet before you came in here tonight, letter G on the consent agenda was passed tonight. That's our proposed 2020 meeting calendar. So it actually has the early budget session for next year. Saturday, February 22nd is the early budget input session for next year. So I'll make sure that I get that on social media and stuff as well. We'll try better to make sure that everybody is aware of that. But you can go onto the website, find the agenda, pull that up. Again, it's letter G, and it'll have the calendar there with all the meetings. And then I think Mr. Hunkley, thanks for that suggestion. Actually, I think that was a good suggestion. I actually asked the question last time about that's one of my peeves, is the water bills, the printing costs and stuff. But that is a separate fund that's actually not tied to the property tax rate at all. So that's not affected, it doesn't affect the tax rate. However, I think it might be worth, if it's something we could possibly do, that dollar for a paper bill thing. I'm not totally opposed to that. Trying to think of ideas to offset some of these costs, because it does affect the price of, obviously the subscribers for getting water, and that's been something that we've been talking about a lot on this council. So, and also wanted to give a shout out to Councilmember Orlando, because he posted something also already getting ahead of himself for next year. He had a little infographic that he was posting around. So, that's also something, he's trying to engage. I'm trying my best to engage. The staff is trying our best to engage. So I'm really glad there's a big group here tonight. So you can go out and ask other people, that you go back out into your communities and your forums and so forth, and tell people, let them know how you want them to contact you. That's gold for us. So please do. I've already said, I think, everything I need to say about the budget for this year. To echo what Councilmember Perez said, I'm out in the community a lot, And we do. We get people asking us for things. I mean, I point to the sidewalks a lot. That's something we put $400,000 more towards streets and sidewalks because we had people coming to us clamoring, saying we need more money for streets and sidewalks. And so, you know, we did. I mean, it was an issue that we heard repeatedly, and so we tried to deliver on what the people wanted. And then as far as the other stuff goes, and you know, the bond items that were passed, they. You know, those are, again, I go back to this, and it's kind of up to us at this point to help manage and direct staff through the process as we start getting bids and stuff to get these projects actually completed and executed. I mean, it's up to us to kind of review that process and manage the spending of the funds that were given to us. So, you know, again, your feedback is appreciated in that process, but I think that everybody up here is doing our college best to definitely try to keep an eye on expenditures and make sure that we give you, you know, great facilities, great staff, great services, but, you know, with fiscally sound decisions behind them. So thanks, everybody, for being here. Really appreciate it. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us at any time. I'm available on most platforms, but, you know, email is always best for us because it creates a traceable record for everybody up here. So if you email us directly or go to the council page and email us, everybody here kind of has a part in that communication with you. So it's always the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for those of you who came out and spoke tonight. We appreciate your input. One thing that was kind of alluded to was some of the council members voted for the budget because maybe they personally benefited from it. I can assure you nobody up here is personally benefiting from anything in the budget. I voted against it last week. I plan to vote against it tonight. I think there's some things in there that can be trimmed from the budget. I think there's a lot of new equipment in there, vehicles that we might be able to push off to a later time. I question some of the manpower increases outside of the first responders. I was publicly against the bond referendum. I voted against it. I think $13 million for an animal shelter when our sidewalks are crumbling is ridiculous, but citizens voted for it and passed it. I think if the citizens got more involved in these bond referendums and got more educated on how it's going to affect their taxes and the long-term debt of the city, maybe they would vote differently. I'm not going to belabor this. That's all I have, Mayor.
Mayor, I'll try to be brief. So I think one of the key words that has been mentioned here by everybody that's spoken is vote, right? Even when you got up and spoke, ma'am, and when you got up and spoke, sir, you talked about, you know, the vote and not enough people had gotten out to vote. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And I'm going to say it again, ridiculous, the lack of voting in this city and the fact that you all can see us, you can touch us, you can talk to us, more than any other elected official, more than your county commissioner, more than your I mean, not necessarily more than, but you consistently see us. You don't see your congressman every day. You don't see your president. You don't see those folks, right? We're the ones that have the decision-making power to affect how you go about your day-to-day lives when you're in this city. But no one comes out to vote. 4,000 or 5,000, that's up from when I got elected. And so, again, it makes no sense, but that's on us as a society. That's on us as a city. You mentioned the $13 million animal shelter. I was against that as well, but the citizens voted for it. I was one of the folks that spoke about letting the citizens decide, but I definitely voiced my opinion because it's ridiculous that if you go to slide 6, sir, real quick, we have a $4.7 million, not deficit, but basically 4.3, I'm sorry, 4.3. Councilmember Hernandez has talked about, we just put another 400,000 into streets and sidewalks. That's horrible. That's nothing. That does nothing, absolutely nothing from what I've seen our streets and sidewalks and throughout the entire city, even the newer parts of the city. And so for us to put together, again, and the taxes don't go along with the bond, but to have a budget where we work more from the inside And I mentioned this at our last meeting. We're taking care of everything on the inside, meaning inside, City Hall, but not enough on the outside. I agree with Councilmember Little when he said, some of the staffing needs to be moved around. Some money needs to be moved. 100%. You say $5,000 here, $5,000 there, $10,000 there. You start chipping away, and you can get to maybe even half of that $4.3 million. But streets and sidewalks has always been something that we've set aside since I've been on this council, since 2015. It's always something that we set aside. We rob Peter to pay Paul. Our deficit continues to increase, but we're not taking care of the outside. I got a text message today / email on a request for potholes to be fixed that's been requested, probably for the past six to 9 months, and it's still no repair out there. I consistently get text messages and emails about sidewalk repairs, and I'm sure a lot of council members up here get the same thing. But yet we're priding ourselves in putting another $400,000 into streets and sidewalks. That's nothing. I'm going to vote against the budget. I voted against the budget the first time. With the tax rate, I think that our money needs to be moved around. One of the council members mentioned that we do have to have money to pay for things, right? We do have to have money to pay for, just the things in the city that people have asked for. But I don't think this budget reflects the things in the city that the people have asked for. So that's why my vote is against the budget. It's for the tax rate, but this is not a budget that reflects what you all as citizens are asking for. And I'm going to say one more thing. Another council member mentioned that, we have a good crowd here tonight, and the room is barely half full. Without the folks that came here tonight for the budget, we'd have about, maybe 10 to 12 people here. More people, again, and this kind of goes in line with voting, need to get interested into city politics, into what we're doing up here, but it just doesn't happen. We don't have enough people that want to know until the end, until after a vote is cast, or until after things take effect, until after a measly 4,000 people come out and vote, and then they vote for a $13 million animal shelter, and now we're all, in our pockets having to pay for this. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
So this has been an eye-opening process for me going through this for the first time. I came in about halfway through the budget process, as we said. This is something that starts in February. So I've been appreciative to hear all the feedback from you guys, both here and sending messages to me. I've been appreciative to hear the feedback from the other council members. And I would say let's get to work right now. February is going to come up right around the corner, and let's be ready to start working on that. But to Mr. Hunkley's point, the day of where we're legally required to pass a budget isn't the best time to sit through and make thoughtful changes to it. So, there's pretty few things I've disagreed with that have been said up here. I share a lot of the frustrations of Councilmember Reed. I thought Councilmember Moore was spot on. But what I would also say, going along with that, thanking you guys for reaching out and the concerns that you guys have, thanking Mr. Hunkley for doing the due diligence. I wouldn't be against that at all, and I don't think anyone up here would be against if everybody was going through the budget with the fine-tooth comb and sending us suggestions. That would be awesome. I think what is less helpful than that, which is very helpful, is like Councilmember Little said, the aspersions about corruption and these allegations that I see all the time that are completely unfounded. And I saw very personally in this last election the kind of trickle down of the nastiness of our national politics coming down into our local politics. And it doesn't make us better. And so to saying that we should all come out here, let's come all out here and participate, but remember that we're on the same team. Everybody up here, we all live here, we all own property in this community, we all have skin in the game, and we're all doing this not for personal enrichment or because we have nothing else to do on a Monday night or on a Saturday. And so a lot of these guys have been up here on their birthdays and anniversaries during this budget process. I mean, we're doing this because we have a sincere love for this city and this community, and it doesn't have to be an adversarial thing. We want to work with you. I don't think anyone up here it doesn't want to be a good steward of the taxpayer dollars because, like I just said, it's their dollars as well. So let's come into it with that mindset, and I think that'll be a lot more helpful. Like Councilmember Hernandez said, I have made it a point to try to get more people into the process, especially people who haven't traditionally been in the process. I couldn't do more to go and share to Facebook pages and post and text people and tell them to come out. This is the very opposite of passing a budget in a smoke-filled room. This process has been done with a lot of integrity, has been done very much out in the open, and there's always going to be things that you can improve, especially for somebody who considers himself fiscally conservative. I mean, there's always going to be improvements. And I'm a process improvement consultant. I mean, there's always, and people say, there's no fat in our budget. There's always going to be something. And I look forward to working with you and the other people in this room and the other people up on this dais to identify that and make a better budget every year that I'm on this council. So, again, let's take advantage of that longer runway that's going to pick up in February. I'm ready to start now. Shoot me an email, shoot me a message, and excited to get to work on that. Thank you, guys.
Mayor, I want to add one thing that kind of couples with what Member Orlando had said. There's been a lot of accusatory talk about a couple of the other members and a couple of our staff members as it relates to the budget about how we spend city money for travel. I've gotten a lot of emails and I've seen a lot of traffic on social media. Particularly, there were a couple of overseas travel expenditures that our city manager was a part of. I just want to let everybody know the city did not pay for that. The citizens did not pay for that travel. The individual people, there was a couple of members that went on those trips. They paid for the airfare themselves. The hotel and the lodging was paid for by the organization that invited them. So there tends to be an accusatory posture when people are looking at the budget and they don't agree. As you can see, all seven of us have all talked about things we would like to change. It is representative of a compromise that we have made. That's what the budget shows. But I can promise you, if you look at the ethical ordinance, there's no way we can take advantage of this budget to be able to grease our own pockets. Not only that, there's not a single person here that I think would even come close to doing anything like that. So the budget is meant to represent what we believe is the best for the citizens. It is that. It is only that. Obviously, anybody can look at a budget of this size and find things that they would like to trim. But again, I promise you would probably find a lot more things that you would like to add.
I don't think there's a person in the audience who, it might be included, who didn't look around several places before we bought your house. And when it came to Pearland, I said, wow, this is where I want to buy my house. And I imagine you did too, but I bet you not a one of you, when you bought your house in Pearland, said, beautiful, beautiful home, what's my tax rate? No, you bought it because of what the value of the house was, where it was located, the quality of life, what the options in the future were. And I believe we have those to offer. A lot of people sometimes will, a water bill is a good example. I've had so many people say, boy, your water bill is terrible. Well, it has water cost, sewer cost, waste pickup from waste management pickup, all together at the bottom. If you look at that and say, wow, that water is terrible. Sometimes that's the effect we have here in Pearland is that depending on where you live, it depends on what area you're in that would require that you have the San Jacinto Junior College as part of your district. We're not in that district here in Pearland. We're not part of the San Jacinto district, so there's no charge here. Some parts of Pearland is charge. Same thing with other entities of that type. Missouri County, Drainage Commission. So when you start adding that together, look at what your house is valued to you. What does the future of that house in future years going to mean? If you want to sell it, you're going to get a lot more money in the future than you got the other day. And I have that feeling myself. So I have to be very careful when I talk about taxes are too much. It has gone up a little bit, yes. But compare other cities with lower tax rates. And there are quite a few of them locally. Would you want to move there? I don't know. I wouldn't. I like it Pearland. So these are the things you have to kind of figure sometimes. And we're trying, and the other problem we have with Pearland Did you know that we're the third largest city by population in the Gulf Coast area? Houston, Pasadena, and Pearland. Well, Clute, Texas hasn't grown in 20 years. And their tax rate hadn't changed in 20 years because they hadn't had money built into water lines or another fire station like we have to do. Our tax rate includes supporting, as the state requires, health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. And when you start supporting them, with maybe 2,000 new people come in, man, that's they've got to be taken care of. They build a house out where we have to build a road out there, we have to build water lines out there, sewer lines, and streets, and curbs and gutters. And once we get built out, and we're a little away from that today, but once we get built out, we're going to be like Pasadena. Pasadena rate has not changed over years because they built out. They built all of the water lines they're going to build. Built all the streets they're going to build. They built all the fire stations they're going to use. So, but we're on fire station 8 to provide the service to the people. And so when you start putting that all together, what do you really want in the area where you are? Is it just tax rate that's the only thing that you get that means that much to you? Or is it the value of the community? What we're trying to do in making Pearland a very, not only, we're going to continue being the third largest city, maybe even more larger as we grow. But this is something we've got to, and I have to do this, my daughter had the same problem. But we finally, when you stop and think about it, I moved here for the quality of the city. It's improving, getting better. I moved here because of the type of service we're getting. I think it's pretty dadgum good service. I moved here because of the fire and police protection we're getting. And that's hard to beat in the Gulf Coast area with our fire and police protection. But does everybody else have that to offer? Maybe for a little bit lower tax rate? Think about the value of what you have. And I have to think about that too. My daughter did too. It is still. But I think we have tried to put together a budget that is, we know we're going to grow, and we know where it's going to grow. So we've got to be preparing that the water line size will serve that area when somebody moves in and builds a subdivision out there. So when you do that, we spend a lot of money. We're not using a piece of property, pipeline, for another couple of 3 months until somebody moves in. Then we have to build a water line, sewer lines. But the other thing I think is important is we've got water, and a lot of cities are going to have problems with water. We're getting ready to build a 10 million gallon surface water treatment plant with Brazos River water. A lot of cities in South Texas are starving for water. In South Texas as well. We're going to be okay for the next, we figured as we're at 2075, we have water to support our growing population estimated, as we kind of projected, based on our growth today. We're going to be able to have water for everybody. So these type things, check those out before you get concerned about what your house payment is. And be sure to check the bill. Make sure you're not adding, the bottom line doesn't show junior college or a school district or a drainage commission or something that's not even not necessarily in Pearland. So I just want to put that out there because I think it's important for us to consider that. I think we put together a budget that was as skinny as it could be for the population growth we've got and the needs that we've had to finish what we have in the way of bond issues that you and I voted for. When you put all that together, I think we're doing pretty good. And I'm not ashamed at all to say that our tax rate is something I believe is appropriate. I believe that but what this particular here is the adopt a budget. Of course, when you have a tax rate, you got to have a budget to be able how you're going to spend the money. And if in the budget you decide you don't want to do a whole bunch of things, 3 or 4 pages of it, then you don't need that much money. But if a budget has to go with the tax rate. That's what this particular item is on the agenda tonight. And but the two of those together, I think, are providing a quality service and a very timely service to all of us. And yes.
I want to say one more thing before we move on, just to acknowledge the staff as well, because I've been meeting with staff whenever I can, touring facilities. Anytime we have an agenda item that I don't fully understand, I make sure that I schedule a meeting to go check it out. And staff has done a great job of trying to mitigate costs as well. I see them out trying to figure out ways to do things cheaper, to change the way that we're doing something to maybe, lower the cost in the future. I've got a couple examples on the top of my head, but even, I see Lori back there. She and I are on an HGAC committee, where we're taking HGAC money, regional money, bringing it to Pearland to do pilot programs to reduce the effects of stuff, people throwing fats, oils, and greases in their water lines that affect the costs that we have to spend to repair those water lines, keep the maintenance up to snuff so that you get clean water and so forth in your system. We're getting access to those funds because we're active out there, and I'm on as many committees and so forth that I can be to try to bring those dollars into Pearland. I know Mayor Reed is on several committees as well. I know a lot of our staff members are on those committees, and we do what we can to bring those dollars in. Mr. Hardy over there is he blows my mind, and the ways he can bring in grant money and so forth to the city. So we're doing what we can to mitigate costs, and I just wanted to acknowledge staff for that as well, because they have really shown me a great side of government that I really didn't acknowledge maybe too much before I got behind the scenes, and so they are really doing a great job. So I appreciate staff for all of the stuff that you've put in, all the hard work you've put in, not just in preparing the budget, but every day, just kind of what you do to help keep things running. So thank you.
Yeah, just to come back and reiterate on a couple of things here. And Adrian, you brought up a good suggestion there, or discussion on that. And the other side was Gary spoke about the 2007 bond issue. And I guess, Mayor, you and I are the only ones that was here for the 2007 bond issue.
I was here.
Well, yeah, you was over there, though. You was on the other side. And, the thing about it, in 2007, we passed a bond issue, and then in 2008 and 2009, the turn down in the economy really hurt, and we decided that it was not the right time to go ahead and do some of these projects because of the tax rate would have to be increased, and we didn't do it. And at the same time, Shadow Creek was running into 630 homes that was in foreclosure during that period of time. So it just wasn't the right time to do it. But the other side of it is, of course, some are saying we paid a higher interest, but out of the bond issue that we did, and looking at, we were able to put projects on the TIP program, which is a transportation planning program with HGAC and with the federal money. So we were able to come in and leverage, I think it said over $200 million worth of money to do the programs, that we had originally put in there. It was 120, 150 million to do that. So that was that was the other side of it on the 207. The bond issue. But at the same time, and Adrian, you mentioned all the things that people could reach out and do and what have you. And I mentioned some of the people that's been getting in touch with me, and they said, bottom line, they said, Woody said, that's what we voted y'all in for, to do it, to come in and control these costs. And it was stated, it seems like it's easier to go in and raise taxes than it is to control costs. And so I think a lot of that stands to good reason. That's the reason people voted for us, to come in, to take a look at the budgets and how much we spend and what we're doing, make decisions. And they're not always easy decisions, and they're not always giving in to what the staff would like to do, or what even we would like to do. We had to cut some areas in there. But my concern is that on this is the tax rate. And again, we'll get on that this next one to come in and do it. We're looking at on a rate to raise it up from 70 up to 74, and we could. My thought is we could do that's a rollback rate. My thought is we could do it on the effective rate, which is 71. I mean, in order to get the same amount of money in as we have here. So, just wanted to add that in there. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comment from council? There you go. We have Secretary, I believe we got a motion second on the floor.
Councilmember Reed, how do you vote?
No.
Councilmember Little? No. Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
No.
Councilmember Orlando?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-3.
Moving in our agenda to new business item number 2, Councilmember Little.
Consideration of possible action, second and final reading of ordinance number 1583. So moved. All right. The motion to adopt the ordinance must be in the following form. I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.741212, which is effectively a 3% increase in the tax rate. At least 60%, equaling 5 members, must vote in favor of the tax rate ordinance by record vote. Read the rest of it. So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion second on the floor and staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Again, we'll go through a presentation to set the stage and remind and rationalize where we've been and over the last several weeks to get to this point. So,
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. As the mayor mentioned, these last 3 items are kind of part and parcel with the budget presented on the last item. This is specific to the tax rate. So looking historically back at last year to where we are this year, right under 71 cents for the FY19 tax rate. This proposed rate at just over 74 cents, a little bit more than a 3-cent difference there. On the bottom, you can see the tax rate is comprised of 2 components. The first is the operations rate. That's what pays salaries and day-to-day expenses for the city's operations that citizens see on the front end. The second component is the debt rate. That pays for projects, large-scale capital projects, and obligations on those, as well as rebates to the municipal utility districts. So starting with the taxable value, we talked about the last item. This is kind of our what drives our ability to pay our debt. This year we did see our taxable value, excluding the TERS, go up to $8.5 billion. That's about 4.3% increase over the prior year, slightly under where our projections were, but still steady growth from the prior year. This budget is based on certified values received for Brazoria and Fort Bend County. We did receive the Harris County values in August. They're slightly higher than preliminary values, which is good, but not high enough that we would want to amend the budget at this time to include those. Looking at the property tax base, we talked about the overall 4.3% change in valuations. This slide here kind of zooms in on the different counties. Kind of the headline, if you're looking at it, we can really see that 70% of the homestead properties had a change in valuation that was 5% or less. That is more than we've seen in prior years. We saw more in the over 5% value previously to this, so that explains a lot of the slower growth, as most of our taxable value is made up of those homestead properties. Looking at the tax rate here, like I mentioned, this is a 3.2 cent increase on the overall tax rate. We are at the rollback rate and the maximum tax rate that was voted by council on August 19th. The tax rate that's currently in the budget is less than what was included in the May 2019 bond project projections, which were shared out publicly. And this overall, if you're looking at the revenue itself, is a 6.9% increase over the FY19 projected revenue. The statement that was read earlier was a state mandated statement about the rate itself. Here we're talking about the actual revenue coming into the city. Looking at the different components and going back another year here, we do see a shift between the O&M and the debt service side. That O&M side going up about 2% to 41.4%, with the debt service still making up the majority at 58.6%. We do see the majority of the change happening on the O&M side, just over 2.7%, 7 cents, and a very moderate change under 1 cent on the debt side, brings us to that total of a 3 cent change. This is a slide we went over last time, so I won't harp on it too much, but you can see the debt component here, primarily made up of our existing and new obligations, with the MUD rebates making up about $6 million of that, and the $25.4 million on the general fund side as well. Looking kind of big picture, we did include the annotated worksheets from the county tax assessor as a part of the initial budget, which was presented on August 1st. We do have the debt rate increasing slightly to the 43.4 cents. A reduction to the effective tax rate would result in a drop of $2.7 million. Likewise, if we were to reduce to the current tax rate, that would be $3.7 million. All of that on the operations and maintenance side, because we are locked into that debt service obligation. This looks into it in a little more detail. There are several components, two components that we get property tax revenue from. The first is obviously just the straight up property tax. Those property taxes that come in through the TERS are a little bit different. We only see about 64% of that revenue back to us. The rest is paid into that TERS to fund projects within the boundaries of the TERS. So this here essentially combines all of those pieces to show how they fit together. We get to that $2.7 and $3.7 million difference. Also very important that we take a look at the sample tax bills for individual residents. Beginning a few years ago, we started picking roughly 10 random households throughout the city to compare what this tax rate change would do to each one of these. Looking at kind of what we consider our baseline, $187,000 home is going to see a change of about $4.83 a month. That's $58 annually. Looking at one that's worth considerable more, we do see a home with a value of $316,000. We see a 6.1% increase. That's going to be $239 annually, or $19.91 per month. Important to mention also that those seniors that qualify and have applied for the exemption will not see a change regardless to the rate or the value on their properties. Looking at a total property tax bill, depending on where you live in the city, your property tax is really only about 25 to 30% city. There's a number of other taxing jurisdictions throughout the City of Pearland. ISD's really leading the way. And then we also have the county, flood districts, a number of education districts as well. On this property tax value here, you can see that the school ratio, or the school portion, is roughly $3,300. This is Alvin ISD. For Pearland ISD, it would be right around the same, $3,300. Pasadena would be just under $3,300. Fort Bend would be right at $3,000. Houston would be around $2,700, and Clear Creek would be around $3,100. And again, that's gonna depend on where the property is located. We mentioned it before, but we have all of our budget materials online tonight and since August 1st, really since February, along with those city council roundups that summarize all of our conversations. So I'd encourage everyone to check that out. And then lastly, I will note that because this is the tax rate, we do need 60% to vote in favor. That is 5 individuals. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Mr. Pearson.
Just to reiterate, besides that 5-vote requirement, we need the tax rate to support the budget, and we had the effective rate last year, but we are recommending and have talked about, and the first reading was on the rollback rate. If there is a strong desire by the council for next year to look at coming in at the effective rate, there's nothing inevitable about any of this, and if that direction's set, we will do our darndest to throughout the year in the preparations to plan for that. But we're here now for the FY20 and the recommendation that's before you tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It does.
Also, comments?
Councilmember Little, how do you vote?
No.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
No.
Councilmember Orlando?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-2. 5-1, I'm sorry. 5-2, correction. Motion passed 5-2.
Consideration and possible action, second and final reading of ordinance number 1358-18. So moved.
Second.
And this is our non-development fees, which is primarily the utility fees, and Mr. McCarter will run us through this.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. So diving right in, we do the fee updates annually as a part of the budget. We solicit feedback from departments and then vet those through management to be considered by council. These are adopted by ordinance, this being the second reading. This presentation is specific to non-development. There are changes to the development fees, which is the next item that was presented by the Community Development Department. So that'll come next, but a little bit separate from what we're doing here. Major fee updates, well, the only fee updates that we have here this year, first starting with Parks and Recreation, Independence Park rental fees. We just revamped a nice facility down the road. These rental fees here are to support that facility and ensure access to our community members. The Southdown Park rental fees, a revamp of how we're looking at that to recoup costs needed to keep that facility operational. The special event permit fee increasing to $100. That's just due to the man hours that go into the backside of connecting all the dots on those special events. The family day pass is increasing to $8 and updating the definition of who qualifies for that family day pass. On the public works side, we do have an update to the water tap fees based on our compensation and classification study and changes to materials. Now remember, in 2017, we adopted a compensation and classification study, which brought all employees to 100% of the recommendation. We have not updated this fee since then. This is just cleaning that up. And then lastly, we talked about this in the first presentation, but there's an update to the water and sewer rates to bring the base rates up to AWWA standards and to increase the overall rate by 1.6%. So with that, I'll hand it back to Ms. Pearson.
Nothing to add, Mr. Mayor. That completes our staff report. Thank you.
What did you have to? Again, to the citizens who are still remaining, so we're talking about the 1.8% versus the 5%. Well, this is one of the things we're doing to try and combat the impacts of the additional services and the improvements we need to try and keep the costs down to each individual citizen as low as we possibly can. So what we're trying to do is imbalance the amount of cost that goes to the larger end users, the large commercial users, so that we can get the additional revenue but not hit our low income users. So originally it was advertised at 5%. We're still trying to get that value, but we're trying to make it to where our low income citizens are paying as little amount of that as we can. And that's what we'll continue to try and do in coming years.
Yeah, this is a piece that I really don't agree with. However, I don't want to see residents pay more, but I also don't want to see all the burden put onto businesses. If we're trying to change the tax rate, we should be welcoming businesses to the city to help offset that, opposed to sending them a message that, hey, just because you're a business, we want you to pay a whole lot more for your water meter, where it should be more so on the usage side. Therefore, it allows businesses to cut back on water, do any kind of programs that they could to save those dollars. So I don't like that we're putting this the burden onto the business. So I'm not in favor of that because I just don't feel that it's fair.
A comment just as a follow-up on the portion that involves the park rentals. So the events are open to the public that include a sale of anything will be charged a base area rental fee and 5% net revenues. Just to do a follow-up and see if staff could spend a little effort trying to find a way. I went back and thought about this a lot, and if there's some way that we can do a ticket type requirement for the exchange of goods, so there's a central place to purchase, any type of requirement just to make sure that we can track that, so there's an actual process in place. That's really the only feedback that I had. So,
absolutely, sir. We'll work to have that and present a Thursday memo through the city manager's office.
Awesome. Thank you.
No comment, Mayor.
Just quickly, as in the first time around, agreeing with Councilmember Moore, I'll be opposing it on the basis of the business changes we're making with the water fees.
Any additional questions or comments from council? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, I believe we got a motion second on the floor here.
Councilmember Hernandez, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
No.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Orlando?
No.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Little? Motion passed 4-3.
Moving to item 4, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration possible action, second and final reading of ordinance number 1023-9. So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Right, already? Okay, staff report?
Mayor and Council, you've seen this before. This is the development fees, updating those and squaring those with state requirements and current circumstances. So nothing else to report.
Question or comment on this item? Very done. Madam Secretary,
Councilmember Moore?
on the floor.
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Orlando?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Little? Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0.
Moving to business item 5. Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration possible action, second final reading of ordinance 2000 Mike-188. So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. We're in discussion. Staff report.
This is the second reading of an item. Then this requires the 6 affirmative votes because there was a negative recommendation from your Planning and Zoning Commission. We went through it last week, but nothing's changed that I know of substantively for your second reading consideration here tonight. That's all I have, sir.
Staff report. Council, any question or comment on the staff report? Madam Secretary, I believe we got a motion second here floating.
Councilmember Perez, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Orlando?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
No.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-1.
Moving to item number 6 on our agenda. Councilmember Owens.
Consideration possible action, first reading of ordinance number 2000M-189. I so move.
Second.
Motion and a second. We're in discussion. Staff report.
This is a request for as first reading for the rezone, and I'll ask one of our community development staff to go through this and give an overview of it. Or not.
Yes, sirs. This is for a rezoning of property from SR 12 to M1 light industrial. It's for approximately 12.89 acres of property on Roy Road. We had the joint public hearing for this on August 5th, and afterwards the Planning and Zoning Commission had a 0 to 6 recommendation to not approve. So this would require a supermajority vote. This map shows the current zoning of the property and the outline of the 2 parcels that are looking to be rezoned. And this completes our staff report.
Staff report.
Yes, that completed the staff report.
Yes, exactly. Staff report. Yes, Mayor. It does, yeah. Madam Secretary.
Oh, we need to vote, Mayor.
Oh, wow.
Council comments
Question or
first.
comment on this item?
Mayor, I think I'll just reiterate what we said in the in the JPH. It just doesn't seem befitting to the area for that to be a industrial zone. It doesn't match the future land use plan. I think staff recommendation in P&Z was appropriate this time. It needs to remain residential.
I just had a quick question. Just noting that there's already that facility there, and then it says for availability of utilities that city water and sewer are currently unavailable. So does that current industrial facility that's there not have access to water or sewer? Is that correct?
We're just taking a quick look at the utility map.
Councilmember Orlando, if you give us 1 second, we want to verify that.
The GIS shows that there's no water up that road.
That's correct, sir.
Councilman.
And that would mean that they don't have a well either then? Or we?
Well, if there's an existing building there, they would probably have a well and septic already, but currently right now, there are no public utilities. However, that is also along the McCard Road alignment, and that project for bringing water and sewer infrastructure on that alignment has already been released.
Thank you.
Does that complete staff report? I think it's still working. Oh, still looking. Ready to vote. We're ready to vote, Mayor. That does complete staff report, correct?
Yes, sir.
Council have any question or comment on the staff report as presented? We have a motion second on the floor, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Owens, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Orlando?
No.
Councilmember Reed?
No.
Councilmember Little?
No.
Councilmember Hernandez?
No.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
No.
Motion fails.
Moving in our agenda, item number 7. Councilmember Orlando, would you present this for our consideration?
Consideration and possible action, first reading of ordinance 2000M-190, so moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. We're discussing staff report.
And Mr. Mayor and Council, this is a first reading, and this is a PD request allowing outdoor storage. And again, community development will give you an overview of this.
Yes, sir. So this was a previous plan development. They have had several considerations for this parcel in order to open up the allowed uses out there. They are looking to rezone the property from plan development with a base zone of general business to plan development with a base zone of general commercial, and to allow the outside storage. The location of the property is at 6301 Broadway Street, and the proposed use is for office warehouse storage or sales with the outside storage component. Again, we had a public hearing on this on August 5th, and the Planning and Zoning recommended 5-1 to approve. And this shows an outline of the subject parcel, and that completes our staff report.
Is that complete staff report?
Yes, Mayor.
I should say so. Council have any question or comment on this particular item, based on staff report?
I do, Mayor. So I'm trying to gauge, I guess, how close this is to the backs of people's homes, but I'm guessing staff can help me with that. The homes that are on the right side of the designated area? Anybody can answer.
The whole property is about 180 feet wide, and it looks like the building sits roughly in the middle. So any proposed expansions on the property will have to meet the buffer requirement, so they would have at least a 25-foot setback that they would have to abide by.
But they're proposing to build another facility back there, right? Like a outdoor storage.
Correct.
And so they meet all the lighting requirements. And I mean, have any citizens commented on this? Did we make sure to post?
We haven't seen an actual proposal for where they're going to put the buildings, but we have heard the discussion of their proposed use.
So we're approving a PD change?
Correct. Just for the underlying uses that are allowed on the site, to open up the uses that could go on that site.
Without a site plan proposal?
The original landscape business that this plan development was written for did not contain a site plan.
Remember, we talked about this in joint public hearing about why is it a PUD when it could just be a simple zone change?
Yeah.
We had left it to the applicant whether they wanted to reapply for a zone change, and I'm presuming that they chose not to do that.
Correct, and this does keep in place the 20-foot height maximum for buildings once you get, I believe, 200 feet off the front street, then no building can be over 20 feet tall. So that was really the only rule in the old PD, and that's being maintained by keeping the PD in place and just changing the underlying zoning district.
Is the applicant here? Yo. Well, I mean, we see so much stuff. I'm trying to remember why there wasn't a change to just a zone change. But yeah, I mean, I'm guessing if staff is okay with this, then y'all have looked at everything and know that all the requirements are going to be met when it comes to specifically lighting, right? Maybe not as much traffic, but it seems like, again, it's surrounded by homes, and so I mean, that's really my biggest concern. And if the applicant wants to comment on it, I definitely, yes.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Nancy Murphy. I'm at 2017 Victoria Court in League City. So I believe your concern was the outside storage, and what we're proposing is to allow outside storage where right now we have a prospective tenant that's looking at leasing the property, and they would just be storing their equipment or whatever they would need to store outside without building. There probably won't be any buildings built that I'm aware of at this point. Again, this is just a prospective tenant, but it is also for sale. But we wanted to allow the outside storage that would entertain other types of businesses to look at the property, and we would open up more opportunity for us as the owner to allow the storage to be outside and give other businesses that opportunity as well. So right now, there's no plans to build anything outside other than what's there right now.
No No plans on putting lighting in or?
Well, not to my knowledge, no. No lighting.
Councilmember, any new lights would have to abide by our rules, and obviously we've discussed this before, our rules are limited, but they would be prohibited from shining across property lines into the adjacent neighborhoods. I think the maintaining of that 20-foot building height probably assists in that area here because it does limit the ability to build a higher building, to put lights up higher, et cetera.
That was a landscape company at one time, and then it went to a plumbing company. It was in there for a while. But if I'm not mistaken, didn't that have some kind of storage facilities in the back that was taken out?
I believe it did accommodate the landscape business that was there for some number of years, but yes, it was removed.
Okay, and yeah, because there was some storage in the back that was taken out for that, and but that's what it had been used for previously. Yeah, yeah.
Any question? In
I'm
addition?
going to vote for it since it meets all the criteria set up by the UDC, and no citizens have come out in opposition to it, so I don't have a problem with it.
Any other council comments? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, we got a motion second on the floor working.
Councilmember Orlando, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
No.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-1.
Moving our agenda to item number 8.
Mayor,
And,
before we
ask Councilmember Perez his comments.
before we move in, this is a project which I have advised on, though I've not taken any money for the project. I did kind of point a direction to the individuals that are applying for the zone change. I think it's in the best interest of the citizens that I recuse myself from the discussion and not vote on this item.
Thank you. Councilmember Reed, would you present item number 8?
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration of possible action, first reading of ordinance number 2000M-191. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We're in discussion. Staff report.
One last time, again, this is a first reading, and this is a request for the change from the single family to the general business. And again, community development will give you an overview of this.
Thank you, sir. This is rezoning from R3 to general business on the back half of a piece of property in our neighborhood here. The parcel or the portion of the property being rezoned is 0.89 acres. Future land plan calls for retail offices and services at 2519 Broadway Street. And the proposed use is for a commercial building. Again, this was on our August 5th joint public hearing, and the planning and zoning recommended approval with a vote of 6-0. And this map shows you the back portion of the property that is requested to have its zone changed. And that completes our staff report.
Does that complete staff report?
It does, sir.
Well, good. Council, had a question or comment on the staff report? And, Madam Secretary, I believe we got a motion second writing here.
Councilmember Reed, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Little? Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Orlando?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-0 with Councilmember Perez absent from the chamber.
Moving to our agenda, item 9, Mayor, council issues for council consideration and discussion. There were none tonight. Item 10 is executive session, which has been canceled. And I'm not sure when, I think staff will advise us when it is to be rescheduled at a future date.
Yep, that's correct, sir. We will add that back on when it's ready.
Okay. Moving in our agenda to other business, none. and adjournment, which I shall do at 8.